This video guide is a guide to countering the Battlecruiser with all three races in Starcraft 2. Battlecruiser has very few unit counters, so it can be difficult to stop. Just real quick, I want to mention that it costs a lot of resources though, 300 gas each, and it's very high tech. So perhaps the best counter is to stop the Terran before you give them 4 bases. Without 4 bases, they're not going to be able to make more than a handful of battlecruisers unless you don't touch them all game. So, if you're losing to battlecruisers all the time, evaluate your game. But for the occasion when it does go into the late game, here's how to stop it. So the best counter is definitely going to be the Tempest for the Protoss. Even with Yamato Cannon, it doesn't really matter. Even with that terrible micro and not focus firing, this still is not much of a fight. If you focus fire, you shouldn't even let one of the battle cruisers should not even get off a second Yamato cannon, and you'll wind up doing quite well. And I'll show you that, just so you know the importance of doing so. So if you focus fire, you're going to wind up doing much better with the Battlecruiser. Okay, or with the Tempest. So another sort of a counter is to add in a High Templar. With a High Templar, you can feedback both of these, and if it really becomes no contest, no Yamatos, plus the extra damage they take. And with the High Templar, you can actually counter battlecruisers with Void Rays too, and this can serve in a pinch if you get surprised by battlecruisers and need time to get up a fleet beacon. There's just a couple of them. Void Rays plus the High Templar work. Without the High Templar, what you end up happening is you just lose you lose right away to Yamato Cannon. 1 hit, 1 kill. It's not very effective. So you need the High Templar for feedback. And that's really it for Protoss. Protoss space ground armies do not stand up to the Battlecruiser. Carriers and Phoenix don't do well against the Battlecruiser either. Battlecruiser has too much armor, so it mitigates almost all their damage. It has 3 native armor. So we're going to discuss Terran counters now. So the only real Terran counter to the Battlecruiser is the Viking. And the way the Viking works is... Oops, I didn't clear. So if we clear 3 Vikings to 1 Battlecruiser is about the equivalent army. The Vikings are actually going to be a little bit cheaper. So what you're going to do is you're just going to shoot and stop. And you can't let the Battlecruiser get in range. And that's how you do it. If you just try to fight the Battlecruiser straight up, you will quickly lose. And even then, with Yamato Cannon, it has a much bigger range than the Viking does. Or it has a close range to the Viking, so you really can't avoid the Yamato Cannon. So what you can do there, of course, is throw in a Ghost. You can go in, double EMP, and then you can start kiting with your units. And with no Yamato Cannon, you can just kite like you normally would. And I'm pressing H, by the way, to make my unit stop. And that's all you have to do with the Viking. The only other Terran counter is really the Battlecruiser. With a Battlecruiser countering the Battlecruiser, that's not particularly helpful. But if you have a larger economy or better upgrades, you can make it work. Ravens are good versus the Battlecruiser too, but not by themselves. Basically, Battlecruisers are too slow to escape the Seeker missile, so they pretty much have no choice but to get hit with it. So let me show you how this plays out. Let's say it's Battlecruiser versus Battlecruiser. This side's got 3 Vikings, and this side's got an extra Battlecruiser. Similar supply count. And let's say we attack. Let's say we had ghosts that strip the let's say we're not using Yamatos just for the sake of simplicity. As you can see, the softening damage, I think it helps. It's still a pretty close fight. And you know, with the extra energy on the Raven, you can throw in some turrets, which aren't, you know, can help shift the balance of the fight anyway. So, Raven's better than no Ravens, but they're not, you know, the ultimate counter. More Battlecruisers. If this was 7 versus 5 and 3 Ravens, the Battlecruiser probably would win. But they do help, so I just wanted to mention that. Okay, Zerg definitely has the hardest time using Battlecruisers. Or beating Battlecruisers, I should say. The reason is that pretty much every Zerg unit will lose to a Battlecruiser in a heads-up fight. So Hydralisk's the anti-air unit. If upgrades are equal, it's not even a close fight. If the Hydralisk has an upgrades advantage, it can work, but it needs to be significant. Mutalisks, no chance versus the Battlecruiser. Really nothing does good against the Battlecruiser. The only unit that has somewhat of an advantage against the Battlecruiser is going to be the Corruptor. And we'll just reset that and go back. So, in equal supply, the Corruptor is good. That's assuming no Yamato cannon. Even if there's just enough energy for one Yamato cannon, it can be tough. I mean, the Corruptors will win, but it's not a landslide victory, especially if I drop a second Yamato cannon, at which point it suddenly becomes in the Battlecruiser's favor. Okay, so what are you going to do? The best solution here is to not engage the Battlecruisers directly. Imagine it was a huge Battlecruiser fleet, and you built up a huge Corruptor fleet in response, but rather than attack the Battlecruisers directly, you just pulled them out of their pack. That's basically how you have to do it. If I had more room, I would keep running backwards. I would never I would never just attack straight up. I would grab, I would run, I would take a shot, and it would actually work a little bit better if I had upgrades or just one more Corruptor, so I'm going to add one on, and that way you can really see how it would work. I have this big pack here, I'll duct, and we'll run. That didn't work quite as well as I'd hoped. So let's just start. I have my Zerg units here. Now if you're all gathered together like this, you can grab one and run away from the pack, and then if I had one more I could one shot, but 2 shots are fine too. So as soon as you start pulling away, or these Battlecruisers are going to hit you. So gather up your units, abduct, and flee. And if ones want to follow, if you can do it with 2, if they're going to wander from the group. So that's how you do Battlecruisers. And just for a little bit better of a example, sometimes late in the game, what you can do as a Zerg player is, if there's a bunch of Battlecruisers here, let's say you're just outgunned, what you can do is build a bunch of automated defense. So if you're in the center of the map, and Zerg players do this all the time. They'll spread the creep out and they'll build like this wall of just automated defense in the center of the map. And you can put Hydralisks in here, you can put whatever you want in here. And then if a bunch of Battlecruisers want to attack, and they might not necessarily want to attack these Spore Crawlers, they might be hanging out here, you just grab one. And when it tries to run, you grab it again and just keep pulling it in. So with automated defense, it can definitely help. And you want to pull them in so that they can't actually attack the stuff separately. So if they can sit on the edge, only a couple spore crawlers will be in range, and it just won't be that good, especially with Yamato's going. So you want to pull the spore crawlers in, so they're, or the battle cruisers in with your Vikings or your Vipers. But that's basically how you do it. Don't try to engage with ground units. Use corruptors, use the Vipers, pick apart the herd a little bit. So I mean, if you had 15 corruptors, 2 Vipers against 6 battlecruisers, again, let's just show how it would work. And then once you've taken out a couple, all of a sudden you can, oh, that was bad micro. All of a sudden you can engage much more efficiently with these guys. But that's basically how it's done. And you can even use Hydralisk if you're decent with the abduct and you have that spore crawler network. You can use the abduct to pull the battlecruisers over the spore crawlers, and when they have some spore crawler backup, Hydralisks do okay against battlecruisers. Just don't work by themselves. So that's it for the battlecruiser video guide. Again, I hope this helped. Battlecruisers are definitely tough to deal with. Just make sure you use abduct as Zerg, use Vikings with good micro as Terran, and use Tempest and possibly High Templar for feedback as Protoss.